Hey everyone, welcome to the Insurance Journal's Academy of Insurance's weekly webinar after show. I'm your host, George, and joining me for the after show today is the director of the Academy of Insurance, Mr. Patrick Raitt, and our instructor for today's webinar. Today's webinar was part 2 of a 2-part series, How to Hire and Develop New Producers. And our instructor for today was Mr. Chris Barand, and is Mr. Chris Barand. And Chris Barand is with us on the after show. Chris, welcome to the after show. It's great to have you here twice in 1 week.
Yeah, thank you, George. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we appreciate your everything you brought today's class, jam-packed with insights, knowledge, cautionary tales, everything you could possibly want in this kind of a class. So thank you very much.
Including a legal disclaimer.
Right, right. I was wondering, in your experience, I know you consult on this kind of operation, hiring and developing great producers. So you must have things that you warn people about and go over and say, you should do this, 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 and this. Do you ever have clients that say, yep, sure, I will. And then call you a month later, or you check in with them and they say, this person didn't work out. And you say, did you do this and this? And they said, no. Like, is that kind of a pet peeve of yours? Do you ever have a client agree to what you're recommending and then have them not follow through on it and then pay the price?
Yeah.
Later on down the and do you have any kind of, maybe not a story, but like an example of something like that?
Oh, it happens in all kinds of fields. So in part 1, I shared with the audience what's called the call reluctance test, and it's an excellent test. And I have people all the time send their producers the test. The producers take the test, and it shows that the person's going to be an absolute failure as a producer. It's really, Chris, there's not any argument about it. And they hire him anyway. And then they call in 3 months or 3 years and they go, man, why didn't you tell me to follow the suggestions of the test? I said, I did. Everyone did. The only thing I could have done different was hit you over the head with a baseball bat. It's like, and they're like, well, you should have talked to me harder. Like, well, at some point in time, it's right there in front of you. We had this one where, because that test is cool, and it identifies whether a person's cheating. And it said the person's cheating on the test. And so I said to the person, I said, well, did you pay attention to the part where it says that they cheated on the test? No. Well, why are you blaming the test? Why are you blaming me or anyone else? This is your problem, dude. And we see that with contract language. Well, if I have that contract language in there, they won't come to work for me. Well, that should probably be a clue that you don't want them. We see that stuff a lot. Yeah. All the time.
You talked about, on Tuesday's class, or in Tuesday's after show, we talked about, I made reference to the Monty Python routine where the gentleman wants to transition from accounting to lion taming, and the job placement person recommends he do it via banking or insurance. And then you talked about non-piracy today, and I was reminded of the Crimson Permanent Assurance, which is another Monty Python short film. But also, you talked about non-piracy and electronics and safety, cyber safety measures to have in place to protect data. Do you ever see a book of business being maintained purely electronically? Because part of the issues with people is that they leave you, not you, but a company, and take a book of business with them. Do you think there's ever going to be a way where they could never possibly physically take a book of business with them because it's locked down, like they can only update things in a database and never ever export it or anything like that? Do you think there are advances that will help with that?
That's possible today. That's totally possible today. What agencies fail to do is they fail to, so when I'm helping develop a producer contract, or I'm helping develop a producer job description, one of the things I like to put in there is that producers are only allowed to do really one thing in an agency management system. 2 things. Let's leave it at 2. One is they're allowed to review the data in the system. And number two, they are allowed to input notes. But they are locked out, and the better agency management systems allow the agency to lock them out from anything else. So if you lock a producer out from anything else, they can't, without considerable effort, actually take any of the data with them. And that's what should happen. But most agencies allow producers to input data and do this and do that and all. And there's really no value in that. It doesn't make sense.
Got it. Chris, thanks very much. Patrick, your thoughts on the topic in general of developing and hiring the best producers possible, or the best ways to hire and develop new producers in general, and also the class in particular, part 2 of the class.
I was really intrigued with when Chris, when you said that all the time they either ignore the test results that they get, or they ignore the advice they get, and then they turn that back on the consultant and say, well, you didn't do this correctly. You know, it's so true that you can lead people by hand all the way into what they ought to do, and they still won't do it. And then they'll still look at you and say, it's your fault. People don't like to take responsibility for their bad choices. People don't like to, they don't like to be told that they don't know how to make a good choice. And we see that with the data like that. That's always very interesting. You briefly mentioned your educational program, and I appreciate you mentioning it. And you mentioned what we do with the Academy. But now's a great time to tell the folks that pay attention to the after shows, what is it your educational program's about, and how can they avail themselves of it?
Sure. Our program's a little different than everybody else's because it's all live training. We don't do any recording or anything like that. And it's real world in the sense that the participants must show that they have researched the coverages. They have to do homework. They have to show how they have learned to apply the coverages. They have to compare forms in writing from one company to another company to another company. And to me, that's real high level, and it's real world. So like we were doing one the other day, that's really just real world. Agents do business in more than one state anymore. Mm-hmm. And the issue wasn't the form. It was this different states' interpretations of the form. And they were diametrically opposite. One state said, this is a covered claim under this form. The other state said no. So the question is, well, what if you have a client doing business in both states? How do you address it? How do you solve that for that problem? And so that's the kind of the programs that we do. And it's a lot of fun. And if they want more information, they can just go to our website, www.burandeducation.com or buran-associates.com. So it's a lot of fun. But it's about being a professional. Mm-hmm. And it's not for run-of-the-mill agents that don't care about coverages. My program's a complete failure for people that don't care.
Yeah. And we've talked about this before because, rather than spoon feed people what coverages exist or how policies apply, you actually require them, go figure, to read the policies they're dealing with and work on application of that policy language in those particular jurisdictions, which, if you're dealing with a broad audience in a online format like we do, often we default to ISO forms. Mm-hmm. and have those conversations. But over and over again, you have to remind people that there's ISO forms and then there's everything else. And depending on the type of business you're writing or the risks you're writing in personal lines, you might have an ISO based form, but heavily changed by a particular carrier. And
Yeah.
it really does behoove an agent to have those kinds of understandings and know what the coverages that they're dealing with are.
It's so important, Patrick. And for everyone that listens and cares, it's great to take an ISO based class, but take what you learn and then go, let's apply it to the forms we are actually selling today. So one of the examples I use is, it's awesome that you guys all have that coverage. All the forms have that coverage. ISO says it has that coverage. Awesome. But one form is indemnity and one form is reimbursement. How does that affect, in the real world, how does that affect a claim? How does that affect client A that has a big balance sheet, a lot of cash, and client B that basically has no cash? On a reimbursement form for client B, they're dead.
Right.
They are dead. And if we don't apply that kind of knowledge and to the exact situation, the knowledge has pretty limited value.
Yep. Yeah. If you can't use it, it's not very good at all for you.
Mm-mm. It really isn't. And that's why I emphasize in the program, it's so important to understand, what is your goal? Is it to have a professional producer, professional agency? Is it just sell whatever you can sell and hope for the best? As to what kind of education, what kind of producer, what kind of contract, what kind of everything that you want.
Yeah. And you had given the example, I think early in the first session, about a person that was a medical equipment salesperson.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, that kind of salesperson, they know everything about the piece of equipment they're trying to sell, because they know that their consumer is going to ask detailed questions, and they're going to want to know why they should buy machine X as opposed to machine Y, and why is it that you're charging this amount as opposed to that amount. And then you go to insurance policies, where insurance is not life or death, but it is the existence or the bankruptcy of individuals and businesses all over in many situations. How is it that people don't know what they're selling? That continually boggles my mind.
Well, yeah, I use that example because there's a really funny example, a real world example. I was with a group of clients after a program, and we were sitting around at a bar, not the bar, but outside the bar. And there's these medical equipment salespeople, very young people there. And we got to talking to them. And two of the people were less than a month on the job. And they knew the equipment inside and out. And I looked at all of my clients there and said, how many of your producers with 10 years experience could explain a business income policy and how to calculate the numbers with as much accuracy, without stuttering, stumbling, hemming and hawing, that these two brand new young people could do with medical equipment? If you're a professional, we've got to get you to their standard of care, their abilities. What we sell is a very, very complex legal contract. It's kind of funny. I have my disclaimer about not being an attorney, but all agents should acknowledge we sell legal contracts and we're not attorneys. Right. It's kind of crazy that we have a license to sell legal contracts, but we have no duty to understand anything about the law. It's kind of a ridiculous perspective in many ways. But that's what we do. And to pretend that it's just insurance, but it's a legal contract, that's not too good.
Right.
It's not too good.
Well, Chris, thank you so much again for your time today, for your help. Really appreciate all the knowledge. We could keep on asking you questions much longer than the after show allots us to. So thank you again. We really appreciate your time today. And Patrick, thanks for coming by the after show. Always great to see you. So
always my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. Well, on behalf of Patrick and Chris, This is George saying thanks everyone for coming. Take care and have a great day. We'll talk to you next time. We'll see
Bye,
you.
everybody.